And joining us on Senior Talk is Terence Santos de la Rosa Sims, Vice President of Senior Services with Chicago Commons. I'm welcoming you to the show, and I really appreciate talking to you today.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. You know, being a caregiver of my father for 5 years now, one of the things that I have often entertained is him coming to live with me, because it would make it so much easier for me to oversee his care and be there on a consistent basis. As I watched for the past 5 years, my father's health has declined significantly. He had a stroke, and he went from being an everyday at work all the time to, LaDonna, I'm ready for my breakfast. So I want to know, when I offered for him to come and stay with me or one of my brothers, it's like he instantly went into a moment of no, like everything was no. So I ask you this for the reasons that I don't have an answer for, because I would think it would be much easier on a caregiver even. But why do so many seniors prefer staying in their own homes as they age?
Their homes, where their kids grew up, often hold decades of memories, which can be hard to leave behind. For example, I grew up on the south side of Chicago in the Roseland community in the early 70s, and I lived over there for about 16 years. And sometimes I go back and visit because some of the same families that were there 50 years ago are still there. Even if their grandmothers or great-grandparents have passed away, the family still keeps those homes. So there's just a sense of community in which people just want to stay where they're most familiar with.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense. I've really seen firsthand how even smallest changes, or the smaller changes, can really throw everything off. More than one item, one routine, and then suddenly there's confusion, frustration, the whole gamut. But how does living in a familiar environment impact a senior's emotional and mental well-being?
Well, a familiar environment can have a powerful positive effect. It reduces anxiety and confusion, especially for those with memory issues or memory loss. It provides a sense of security and stability. It reinforces memory through familiar surroundings and routines. It helps prevent feelings of isolation or even depression in some cases. But in contrast, sudden changes in the environment can sometimes lead to disorientation, stress, or even cognitive decline amongst vulnerable individuals.
Well, let's be honest. We don't talk enough about what feels like, aging. Not even just in physically or emotionally. I think about, just so many times we look up and it's 10 years have gone by. 20 years have gone by. And imagine going from being who you used to be to who you are now. So let that sit for a minute. Can leaving home affect a senior's sense of identity or independence?
You know what? Yes, oftentimes it can. It's not absolute, not always, but home is closely tied to a person's identity. It's where they've built their life. They've raised their families. They've made decisions on their own terms. Living in that environment can make you feel that there's a loss of control or autonomy, lead to diminished sense of self and purpose, create feelings of being dependent or displaced. Even when assisted living offers better physical support, the emotional adjustment can be significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you're balancing safety, finances, time, emotional capacity, and somewhere in the middle of all that is someone you love. I feel this. It's so deep. Who may or may not agree with you, it doesn't matter. For the families listening right now, trying to figure this out in real time, what advice would you give families who are deciding between aging in place and moving to assisted living?
Well, there's no one-size-fit-all answer, right? It just depends on one's health, as you mentioned, safety, one's personal preference. If we consider a balanced approach, consider aging in place, if the home can be made safe, accessible, meaning grab bars, minimal stairs, proper lighting, things like that. The senior is relatively independent. So their access to in-home care or nearby family support, if they can have those resources, if they're able and they're eligible to have those resources, that can be a benefit. But if we're considering something like assisted living, that suggests that there are probably more serious medical or mobility needs. Safety is a concern because now we're talking about falls, medication management, things like that. And then social isolation is becoming a problem, right? A lot of our seniors, sometimes our caregivers are the only people that they see for weeks, for months, because their family either is not around, live in other states, or they don't come and visit them. So the most important advice that I could probably give is to, if possible, include the senior, older adults in those decisions, because it preserves dignity, it preserves respect, and it reduces resistance if they do have to move out of their homes and move and age in a different facility that's not in a familiar environment in which they have been used to for years or decades.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, one of the biggest myths is that people have to figure this one out alone. That's not true. There are resources, programs, entire organizations. I just want people to understand how important it is to look into these resources. Can you share some resources with our listening audience?
Sure. Depending on what exactly we're looking for, here at Chicago Commons, we have an adult day center, 5 days a week, 8 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., where we have seniors come out and they participate in daily activities. They go out on outings. They interact. We celebrate holidays, birthdays. There's a lot of learning pieces to that. We have musicians come out. They go to civic operas. They go to the museum. They go to plays. So there's a lot of interaction. And it's not just seniors. Let me make that note of Adult Day. There's been a stigma that would suggest that it's only older adults. We do have younger adults, depending on their diagnosis of health, possible disability. And, of course, there's our home care services, which is pivotal for aging in place. A lot of our seniors, our older adults, they are very independent. They're used to cooking. They're used to cleaning. They're used to sweeping. They're used to running their own errands. But over time, as we age and things change and our body changes, we kind of slow down. But this is where Chicago Commons comes in with their in-home care services. We have highly qualified caregivers. A lot of our caregivers are CNAs. They have a strong healthcare background. So they do the daily living activities for them, the cooking, the cleaning, the washing, the running errands. And then there's the emotional, mental part that we talked about earlier. It alleviates social isolation. So there's a companionship part that goes along, because here at Chicago Commons, we pride ourselves on respect, dignity, integrity, being reliable, being dependable, having strong communication skills and interpersonal skills that go a very long way when we interact with our seniors when we provide home care. So it's not just about daily activities, personal grooming and bathing and things like that. It's also the interaction and the connection that they get from our caregivers. And a lot of times we have a lot of long-standing clients that we have, 10, 15, 20 years. And those seniors become like family to the caregivers, which entail they become family to Chicago Commons.
Love it. How can families actually access home care services with you guys?
They can actually call us at 773-373-5055, or they can reach out on our website, www.chicagocommons.org.
Wow. Well, I really want to thank you, Terence. And did I say your name right? I love putting my little roll of the tongue there. Santos de la Rosa.
De la Rosa. You got it just right. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. Vice President of Senior Services at Chicago Commons. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again or hearing from you again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Of course.